Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Tree Actions, the Human Forestry Podcast. And with me, as always, is my trusty counterpart, Tony Trusselt. How's it going, Tony?
It's doing well. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever it might happen to be.
Whatever it is, wherever you are. And joining us all the way from the right coast, I believe in the province of New Brunswick, Mr. Danny LeBlanc. How's it going, Danny?
Pretty good. Got the afternoon off for a little bit just to chat with you guys, so I'm not complaining, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, Danny, we start all of our podcasts with only one question, and we're going to follow in our tradition, the only tradition I think that we have at Tree Actions, and that is this question. If you would please share with us the first memory you have where you felt connected to a tree or to trees.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say one of my memories that comes up every once in a while is when we were younger, Dad took everybody in the car and off on the back roads, and Dad's constantly looking up into the air around Christmas time. So looking up, and then all of a sudden he says, "There it is." So pulls over, goes in the trunk, grabs the axe and a buck saw, and starts axing away, chipping away at the base of this spruce tree. Back then, it looked like it was probably 70 feet tall, but it might have been 30. But anyway, he knocks this tree down, just to get the top for a Christmas tree. And like anybody else, I thought that was pretty cool, Dad, going at it. And it's like, geez, that's a big tree for a small top. And he's like, well, you got to get the good ones. So anyway, that was one of those memories that you never forget when you're a kid.
Wow.
Definitely.
How old do you think you were?
Oh, I bet you I was 4 or 5 years old, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that, I know people harvesting trees, but I've never heard of someone cutting a larger tree to get the top. Usually it's just a small tree, but I guess it would have a lot of it would look better probably as the top of a bigger tree, wouldn't it? The tree.
Oh, yeah. Like it, like not saying that it was a beautiful treetop, but it stood out on its own. And yeah, like they'll grow. They can be pretty tight. It's probably a fir, actually. So you know what I mean. It has nice tight whorls to it. Not big spread. Back then, I never heard of Christmas tree farms, whether they start bringing them in for people back then, but this would have been in the early 70s, so I doubt it was probably just starting out as an industry in our area anyway. Yeah.
Right.
So that's where one of my memories, but obviously everybody has lots, like as they going to school there at the agricultural college. The first time I got to climb a tree there, and what was supposed to be secure was climbing off manila rope as well. Some of the younger guys I work with, when I say I started climbing on manila, they're like, "What brand's that? Who makes that?" They don't even know it's natural fiber. But
well, you must have been right on the edge of that then, Danny. Like just
yeah, like it went from there to nylon, and then this new high end line started to come out, Arboriculture, and you know how that all goes, right? But when I first started working, a lot of our rope were manila, and then started to get a little more into synthetics. But when I got my first job with the municipality, the city of Fredericton, all our big bull ropes, they were all manila. It was a while before we got into any synthetic rope at all. I was climbing off of Arboriculture at one point, but Scotty, the older guy that did most of the bigger trees, at that point, he still climbed off Manila. He didn't trust the other stuff. That's what he grew
So
up
is
with.
it fair to say that, like change is it fair to say that change is always to be feared and resisted, as we say? It when synthetic rope came out, was there a similar nervousness to switching over to it like there is with other new developments in industry?
Um, yeah. I mean, for me, I was all about new, like looking for change, everything about the work itself. Like, I wasn't stuck in what everybody else did. I mean, some of our safety standards back then were pretty weak. You know, most of the guys I worked with at that point, especially with the city of Fredericton, the guys that climbed never wore a hard hat. A couple of them never wore shirts at all. The only thing they had on were chainsaw pants. Like, I was the first person that climbed for the city of Fredericton in quite a while that actually wore a hard hat. And
Interesting.
yeah, and doing a
So
lot of elm removals. Huh?
you're saying they wore chainsaw pants but no hard hat and shirt, but they had chainsaw pants on?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
That is wild. I've never heard of, like, it's common you hear about no hard hat and no shirt, but but chainsaw pants, like that's like no, that rarely occurs. They usually have cut off
Oh
shorts
yeah,
on to
yeah,
boot.
yeah. No, these
Wow.
guys, because you know, I guess back then, um, you know, just because they were the ones taking down these big dead elm trees, and there wasn't a whole lot of like, you can't work that way. It was like people are just happy to get the trees down as they started to decline and fall apart. So yeah, from the city, the province, you know, everybody about that seemed, you know, like one guy there, William Sinclair, everybody called him Scotty. You know, his nickname was the Legend, because you know, he took down a lot of these bigger elms in his time, and nobody could compete with him when it came to taking these big trees down. Even though there was other individuals that were more than capable, but Scotty seemed to have the lynch, or the he was the one that was most well known in our area for elm removals. I seen his
What?
picture album. He had two of them there. The things were so thick, like he was constantly getting in the paper here in Fredericton all the time for his episodes up in the tree.
So what was he infamous or was he famous or both?
A bit of both. If you worked with him, he was infamous. But if you were someone watching him, you know what he could do. You put a set of spurs on this man's feet, and he could go anywhere. And they're pole spurs as well. And back in the day when I first started, you know, even when we were deadwooding some of these elm trees, I was told I had to have the spurs on because climbing without them was unsafe.
Right.
And just how we used to get into the tree, you know, you'd take your climbing line and you'd make a bullet, and then you'd try to throw that up into that first union. And
Yeah.
then one guy would hold the other end of the line, and then you'd hand over hand because our lanyards wouldn't go around the trunks. So it was hand over hand till you get up close enough to hopefully get a lanyard around something so you could work from there. But yeah, it was just make it up as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it seemed to be for quite a long time. I mean, even for me, there was always like you get secured, but it was always after you got up in the canopy.
yeah,
Like the getting up part, that was a unwritten, undisputed technique. Like you get to where you got to work as fast as you can,
yeah,
grabbing and holding and climbing, and then tie in. Always tie in before you start work, but from
yeah,
the ground to the tie-in point, it was you could or you couldn't.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I when I started, before City of Fredericton, I worked for another company in Halifax, but my first job when I got hired on with the city, I was supposed to be a landscape foreman, and then one of the guys that was doing tree work just up and quit one day, and then the superintendent asked if I'd be interested to get back into tree work. And at that point, like, the difference between Halifax and Fredericton, basically you're doing elm removals day after day. And I was like, I don't know if I can take it mentally because the size of the trees and what had to be done to them. And Dave just said, well, give it a shot. Your job's secure. You can always go back to landscaping, but right now we're down. We only have one climber, so see what you think. And I got started, and I slowly progressed. My progression was slow and steady curve up, building my own personal confidence and comfort level with the situations that I was getting into. And then after a while, we had they end up buying a truck, which just made the job a little bit easier, being able to stand in the bucket, and that's when I really was able to start focusing on different rigging techniques that wasn't a big thing prior to me getting there. Creating false crotches and things of that nature. Some of it was, there was a fella here that made parachutes, and I went to him and asked him if he could sew this together to make my own webbing slings and rigging off carabiners and stuff. And like the guys on the ground thought it was great because always natural crotch rigging was some trees made it really difficult. Like, Scotty would go tie these massive limbs, and it would take us half an hour to try to figure out how we're going to get that to the ground. But as you always say, it was tea time for him after he cut it off and was hanging in the rope. You guys do your thing. But for me, it was try to make everybody's job as easy as possible and being able to move things around.
How did you get the idea? Like, did you think of it yourself?
Actually, the first thing that got me into it is I got a hold of an old Hydro Ontario um, force manual. And actually, the very first false crotch I used,
Okay.
I took right out of the book. I took 4 wraps with a shorter piece of manila, tied it off with a square knot on the back side, ran the rigging line up through the middle two,
Yeah.
and took the top out of the tree
Yeah.
with, once again, manila again. And the guys I was working with, like they'd never seen that. And they actually had no idea what I was doing, but when they seen that it worked, it was like, huh, isn't that something? But then from there, it just for me, it just like
Wow. Yeah.
like, yeah, you know how a lot of times you end up being self-taught, and you try to talk to other fellas, your peers from different areas, and see what they're doing and trying, and at the time, it was like I just seen things being a little more simplified if I could move things around instead of just relying on what the tree gives you.
That was definitely something I saw too. Uh, and when you talk to rope manufacturers these days, they cringe at the thought of using rope as a rigging point, right? But it makes me really wonder about the not only the construction but the type of rope and the rope fiber. Like Manila, obviously it handled it because it was done quite a bit, and I
Yeah.
and but with I think it became very ineffective as soon as synthetics came on because they just didn't handle
Oh
the
yeah.
the friction, whereas Manila must have. I never have tried it, but obviously it didn't break, and it obviously didn't melt and saw it right through immediately, and it was able to take the heat and the friction. And I mean, how often did you notice that you had to change it, or what? Like you must have observed that.
Like obviously when you see smoke coming from contact points, you start to wonder what's going on. But you might go down and have a little look at it, and seems to be all right. But yeah, like the use and abuse was, a lot of butt hitching, regardless whether it was natural crotch or not. And we had another guy that worked on the ground, run the ropes for Scotty, especially Freddie Charters. Like this guy, like taking wraps around the tree and, taking wraps, different diameter, bark, everything about it. Nothing's ever the same. And that man, he could do things that I've never seen anybody else able to do. His control on butt hitching rope, like letting it run, and he could let things go and just the tips of the branches would touch the ground and they'd just come back up again. Like for me, it was pretty impressive to see
Huh.
what he could do, and the way he would handle that rope. Like, back then I was probably a better student than anything, and I just observed what other people were doing. And those that were willing to explain or could explain why and how they were doing things, like I was a sponge. Like I go to these conferences once we started attending them, and other guys would be there to enjoy themselves, and I'm just constantly picking their brains at the bar. And after a while, I'd get told, like, okay, enough about work, man. Like, let's just have a beer, enjoy yourself. the that was my life.
Right. And
Everything about it.
when did tree climbing come into it?
We had our very first one in 1990.
Wow.
And that was actually in St. John's, Newfoundland,
Wow.
of all places. Yeah, and which was good for me. Like without competition, I gotta say that I would never would have met or got to the position that I am. I mean, it changed everything about my career. Was being able to go to these competitions. The people I met, and having that ability to actually get in a competitive environment again, because I grew up as a curler, competitive curler, and when I was married, at one point I was told no more. Like you take it to the extremes when it came to curling. So once so I stepped away from that for a bit, and then once there was this competition that was work related, it was like, well, it only makes sense, right? I'm getting involved in. But yeah, it was in the early stages trying to understand the rules, and a throw ball even. What is that? Like I never even had a throw ball. So
Yeah.
once I got my hands on one of those and trying to figure out how to throw this damn thing, like I'd go in the woods where nobody could see me, trying to come up with a technique because I hadn't seen anybody use one.
Right.
So yeah, it was once again a slow progression. But by the time I actually got to the international, which my first competition was in '94 in Halifax, uh, not that I had it dialed in, but I definitely felt a little more comfortable with what I was doing it and what I was doing and how I was doing things. And yeah, like '94 was probably I think that was one of the first years the Europeans came over to compete. If I'm not
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure. I know, like there was a lot of the techniques and the materials they were using. I think it took a lot of the people that were running the Halifax show by, like, well, no, you can't use that. Like, we've never seen this. We don't know what that hitch is, and like,
Yeah. Yeah.
what do you mean you're putting these smaller cordages on this other? It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. We gotta no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot from that point forward. I think the industry changed. To me, it went from techniques that were used for 100 years to just constantly evolving and changing. Or at least that's how I saw it.
Yeah. Halifax International was when the ISA international comp was there is when that was probably the most change that had ever been introduced, and it was where Francois introduced
Yeah.
the Michaud, not the
Yeah.
Velveteen. He
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
bring the book
Yeah.
that he got it from, so they wouldn't let him climb on it. And by the
Mm-hmm.
time 95 it was Salt Lake, that was the next year. And there were four of us that showed up climbing on the VT thinking we'd all invented it. And Francois brought the book that he got the Michaud out of, and right beside it on the other page was the damn VT.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and you know, four different climbers in North America came up with the VT after seeing the Michaud
Yeah.
in Halifax.
Yeah.
And all of them thought they'd invented it, but they hadn't. But yeah, I agree with you. That was you know, that was the beginning of almost like what it is still like today, I think.
Yeah. Well, I just, for me, from that 1994, 95 to the early 2000s, every year that I was able to get to the international, there were so many new products and things. It was like the evolution was just, it was mind-boggling. Like, it just evolves so much, so fast. Techniques, equipment, materials. It was hard to keep up with,
Yeah.
because you didn't have access to the information that everybody has nowadays on their phone. So it's like you had to be
Yeah.
there to
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
And, you take your pictures, you ask your questions, and you try to remember as much of it as possible. It's like,
Yeah.
I think that's how he tied it, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like some of the hitches, you know.
Yeah,
It's
it
like,
makes me think of what it must have been like for
yeah,
sailors. It was magnified. You know, they'd finally get to port after 8 months, and you know, they guys had figured out a way to hoist or lift or tie something, and you'd try to, how did you guys do that? You know, the
yeah,
conversation of a trade that isn't officially a trade, and yet those that have, you know, where you're doing something that literally clearly has high risk and severe consequences, which you learn as you go as well. You know, there's
yeah.
a common bond that exists. You know, Danny, so many of our guests talk about that, you know, well, not a lot of them, the ones that are tree climbers and go in the competitions, and they mention about the change. And we talk about the techniques and the things we learned, but I wonder how much has to do with the people that we meet and the connections that we form, you know, but with those people. Obviously, it's tied to learning about tree climbing and so on. But like, have you ever thought about that? It, like inspiring or spiritually, emotionally, how it affected you, and did it change or impact you in that way? Do you think?
Oh my God. Like I said, if it wasn't for the involvement with the tree climbing competition, getting to go away to these internationals, the first few times it was like the faces were familiar, but the names weren't. But after 3 visits or so, like going back, there's people that you meet from all over the world that where you felt like you only got to spend a short period of time with them, but it was like you were friends for life. The conversations would pick up almost instantaneously after a quick, like, how you doing, what's new, yada yada, and then you just get back into storytelling. You know, and then seeing the different techniques that people were using, like there was nobody that I met there or really anywhere else that it's like, well, this is my secret thing. I don't like sharing it with anybody. Everybody was more than open.
Right.
Especially if you weren't from their area, as a fellow competitor, it's like, yeah, I'll show you, like anything about it, seeing people do things a little differently. Like the first time I seen anybody footlock in a comp was actually 94. And I think it was one of Bettis's mentors back then. I forget his name now,
Kai,
but from
Kai
Germany.
Buselman,
Yeah,
Kai.
I mean, he was so smooth because back then it was basically the body thrust, but you could either do the body thrust or
Yeah,
footlock, I believe, for a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
years. And to see him footlock like how smooth. It's like it looks like he's not moving fast, but it's just next thing you know, boosh,
Yeah.
he's up there. It was like, holy cow. Seeing Mark Chisholm, because back then, the work climb, everybody started from the ground till we got to the new
Yeah.
format that we have now. And Mark throw in with this little pouch.
Yeah.
What is that? Right? And then for him to pull up the back end of it and have another pouch on the back end so he can position it is like, oof, mind blown. Like, unbelievable.
Yeah. I know.
Like, these guys are smart.
Yep. Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's yeah, those simplistic but powerful innovations or techniques that, you know, and I'm sure they learned it somewhere themselves, but
yeah,
nowadays it seems it's more like around a piece of equipment or gear where it's something cool, like, rather
yeah,
than it seems like to me. But again, I'm not as active in the climbing realm anymore.
yeah, yeah. But no, like I said, without those connections or the opportunity to go there, I definitely wouldn't have had the opportunity, just work related, to do what I've been able to do, like get connected with Arbor Canada and, just the other individuals and the work methods. Obviously, he evolved because of these connections with other individuals. There's no brainer on that. And, the feelings of going to an international and, placing what you thought you could be. Like, I'm not sure if there's ever a climber that went to any comp and say they had their best day ever, but, knowing that you did well in one event and not so much in another, it is what it is. But, like our local our event, our chapter event, there's years where I scored 0 in the throw line, and then I go to the international and I managed to place third twice at the international.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to say how, but it worked.
Yeah, it's
So
like when you
you can go from one extreme to the other. It's not a consistent path, and your abilities, your opportunities. There's obviously timing and luck falls into play at different times at work and also at these events.
yeah, like tree climbing, the sport of tree climbing and golf, I think have a lot of similarities that way. You you can't.
Yeah,
Some days it's just perfect. Some days you can't figure it out. Tony,
yeah.
where were you around at? Where were you at in your career at 94? In 94, were you in Halifax? No.
No, I was still in the army or just getting out.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I guess some of us go back a little because my first comp I think
I
was
had, I
89.
mean, I had attended comps or watched, not as a competitor with, because my dad, I'd seen comps through the
Oh, okay.
80s. Um, back in the day. I can still remember the comps before they changed to the international format, right? When the work climb started from the ground. Um, there was
Yep.
no Masters Challenge. The work, and then
yeah,
you had the events were real. That was the
yeah,
biggest change, I think, was the work climb started from the
yeah,
ground, and it was basically a Masters Challenge climb.
yep.
Yep.
And like there was no time limit on the aerial rescue, I believe, and the throw line as well. You had your three. You're allowed three tosses at the lowest, medium, and then the high tosses, but no time limits. So, like, how long these events would last sometimes was like, if, I think the work climb was probably one of the first events to finish up, other than the speed event. But like in '94, there was a fella from Ontario that brought up a board, had the injured climber on a board, lowered him. Like, he won the rescue that year, but I don't know how much time it took. But obviously, you're not doing that in 5 minutes.
Right, 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 right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I found, like for me, there was always the aspect of wanting to win. I think after a while you realize that it really is like you could be the fittest and the most in shape and practice, and yet it just takes one bit of bad luck, like you say, like a bad bounce or a
Hmm.
weird slip, and
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know you're in next year country right away, but yet you keep going back. And I don't know that it was always about winning. There was that, I think the sense of community and like I guess the word I'd use is connection. Wanting to
Hmm.
see those people, wanting to have those conversations, the energy of that event that was created by the people that were there, and uh, the what am I trying to say? The the consciousness of the event, the feeling you got in and around those people. There was a lot of commonality, and regardless, at the end of the day, I don't know anyone that you know left in a huff or said, "Ah, this comp's rigged," or that got all upset as because something went wrong, or even if they did get judged fudged, there might
Yeah.
be upset for a while, but it's because it's interesting. People just you wanted to go back once you'd been there, and I've
Oh,
never like. What would you call that? What made it like that for you?
well, I mean, for me, it was, not having traveled a whole lot, the opportunity to go to other areas, in the US, and I end up in England once at a comp, was another aspect of that, I wouldn't be to these locations or these places without that. It was always the opportunity to go back and meet up not only with the climbers but other individuals that would go to these conferences that you got to meet year after year, and without that connection, like I had the opportunity to go work in New Jersey there with the Chisholm family, and the only reason I had that opportunity is meeting Mark and then his father, his brother, and his mother at these competitions, and getting the invite to, like, hey, I hear you're going to the States. You ever think of working for a small tree company there, family run? And I was like, oh, like, are you sure? And they're like, yeah, no, we'd love to have you. So, I went down there. I did a 2 week just to make sure I thought I'd be comfortable and they were comfortable with me. And then it was like, all right, let's full on. Let's get that application and get you that visa. And I was down there. It only lasted not quite a full year, but what I learned in that time frame that I was there was another thing that really changed my career. Like I thought I was decent at rigging, but then, like I always tell people here, once I got down and got working with the Chisholms, like then I realized, well, I was in the minor leagues. Now I'm in the major leagues. Like some of the things that was being done down there was like, oh, unbelievable. Like, yeah, this is
Well,
just
big
the
trees
way that
too.
big trees. Yeah, a little bit bigger than what we're used to here, but obviously height wise
Yeah, yeah.
and size. But yeah, no, that when eventually I came back, some of the things that I was doing. Some of the people that I work with is like, you sure you want to cut it there? And I was like, yeah, yeah, no, this is where I'm cutting it right here. And it took them a while to get used to like seeing the opportunities that you could make that were time saving and also energy saving as well. Like instead of doing a lot of rigging, like let's open up a lane and let's put her down.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah, because a lot
So,
of our work is power line related too. So just knowing how to judge forward lean and limb attachments, is just one of those things that after a while it became maybe second nature, but at the same time, it took a while for some of the people I work with to have that faith.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, maybe, what was it like? I mean, there's the tree world's relatively small world, but there's
Yeah.
many generational tree companies. But with Mark's success at tree climbing and with him being involved with Tree Buzz, they're maybe a bit better known tree family
Yeah.
in within the tree world. What was it like being part of that company and besides the learning, just being involved there, whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah, well, once I got in there, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but they're like any other tree company. They struggle to hire the right people. They have applications, a lot of them, but to try to vet some of these individuals, and then when I was there, they'd have a few fellas that would come on and, well, we're going to give you a trial, like we'll get you in for the day at least, and then we'll go from there. And you know what what was coming in for local fellas was not what I thought it was going to be. There's a lot of fellas that only were there for one day and that was it.
Hmm.
And that made me realize that, well, I've been here for quite a while now, so whatever I bring to the table has value to them and also to myself, because I was still in that, not that I've ever stopped, but I was still in that sponge learning mode. Like the toolbox was always open and it was constantly things were being added to it, like observations, and then just figuring things out on my own. But watching Mark in some ways on how he would go through a tree and some of the cutting techniques he would use, it's like, well, why did you do this? Or what compared to what you were doing before, or this or that. And it's one of those things that I wish that some of the people I work with had that same observational skill and the comfort level to actually ask, like, why did you do it this way when you were doing it a different way prior to that? Without constantly saying, did you notice? But yeah, I was constantly picking people's brains. So,
Well, and that may
and
be a common thread there, Danny. I
yeah,
think there's, I don't think that's unique to you. And there's the individuals that have been in this industry a long time and that have enjoyed it. It hasn't been a sentence, but it's been a vocation. I think have that mentality. And that I guess you'd have to have a certain amount of humility and pride. A blend of that in order to be willing, first of all, to observe and then learn, because there's a lot of people that watch another person do something, go, oh, well, why would you do it that way? Rather than, well, why would you do it that way?
yeah,
If
yeah,
that makes
no,
sense. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's your attitude, really. It's the attitude you have in watching and being willing to learn from others. And that not everybody has.
No, I learned that, being involved with Arbor Canada, but also having the opportunity to work with a bunch of young fellas and see them advance in, I guess, what they do and how they do things here with the companies that I've been with. I always thought, like, maybe it's me, I'm not getting the message across properly, or I'm over explaining things. But there comes to a point where I start to realize is like, it's not the teacher, it's the student. They don't have that same,
Hmm.
I'm not sure what it is, that ability to look at a situation and be curious enough to know, like, why did it react this way, or why are you doing it that way? Like, sometimes in the past, when I was a little younger, I would get quite frustrated that, why aren't you guys asking questions? Because I know I'm doing stuff I haven't done in the past. Not that I was always the guy in the air, but I spent a fair amount of time being the fella in the air for, a pretty good chunk of my career. And it used to frustrate me, like, to the point where there'd be anger. But now I just like, you can only lead by example, and as long as you're not doing anything that's putting things that you don't want anybody else to repeat or duplicate, um, they're either going to pick it up or they will ask you those questions. And when I do get asked those questions, it warms my heart. Like I just feel a lot. It's like, okay, I got no problem explaining this to you. This is why.
That's interesting. It's interesting perspective, that, you know, no matter how much you want to teach someone or even how much you still need to have a willing participant in a student, don't you? You have to have someone that actually, is open-minded enough to listen at least and open that mental toolbox. Hey, Tony,
Yeah.
from your psychological philosophical background, sorry, like
Mm.
that's an interesting concept. I don't think we've had anyone talk about that yet, or certainly I haven't given it as a very thought-provoking comment, Danny. That not the teacher, the student. What do you think, Tony?
Yeah, I mean, this has come up a lot lately with the new generation, and
Right.
uh, I just think that they learn a little bit differently, because they've been exposed to different things, and you have to adapt that way. I
Yeah.
think expectations are a little different. Um, I was just talking with a friend of mine who I do martial arts with, and he just retired. He worked for American Airlines as an aircraft mechanic. He retired after 38 years, right? Like you just don't hear that often anymore. But, my father's generation, a 30-year career at a business was pretty common, right? That was kind of your goal, right? You'd get to a company and you'd stay there for 30 years, you'd get your pension. So that's changed a little bit. Um, I think mostly what I've observed is that and it actually came up when we were talking with Robin Adair a couple of weeks ago. It's like, sometimes you literally have to explain the difference between a regular head screwdriver and a Phillips head screwdriver and a Robertson head because they've never taken things apart. Like, they just, and it's not a bad thing. It's just they learned a little bit differently, right? They had other things to do. Like when I couldn't take it anymore, my mom was driving me crazy. I went out to the garage and took an old lawnmower apart. I think kids today, they just go to their bedroom and play a video game or something. And neither's right nor wrong. It's just, and I think that, and I do agree with you, Danny. I
Yeah.
think that the students sometimes suffer in the fact that I'm with you. They see there's sort of a natural lack of curiosity, but if you can learn how to pique that curiosity, then that's when it becomes good. But it's
Yeah.
not always possible. I think a lot of people are disillusioned. A lot of people getting into this industry are disillusioned
Yeah.
by the amount of labor that's involved, right? Like, like it's like because not every day is climbing a beautiful oak tree,
Yeah. Well,
just removing little sticks. Not every day's like that. Some days are, and it's awesome.
yeah.
But other days it's dragging brush
Mhm.
uphill in the mud, with it raining sideways, and the job's
Yeah.
underbid, and nobody's making. You'll get your
Mm.
paycheck, but if the company keeps going like this, you're not going to have a job that much longer. So it's
Yeah.
just different aspects to it.
Yeah.
Well, even climbing up in the
Yeah.
tree, like getting there, it's not easy. It's pretty cool to be up there, but the art of
Yeah.
the getting up there. But do you think, Danny,
Well,
that like that comment is it do you find that's more common, like what Tony's talking about with the new generation, I guess we'll call it. I don't know what the name of this next
yeah.
generation is.
Um,
What do they call them? Screenagers?
yeah. Well, there's a few fellas that like, that are a little younger than me that are at the getting close to the peak of their careers, and I just see them in what I used to be like. They might be a little shorter tempered, because they're trying to do the same things. Not that they have their own way of explaining things, and when someone doesn't get it, I see the frustration and I can hear it in their voice. Because now with the comms like the Sennas,
Right.
everybody's on it. So which is, like, why don't you understand, like, you're supposed to be doing this and not that type of thing? Because it's so easy to communicate
Right.
compared to before. But
Right.
I just like, all right, you know what? Like maybe it wasn't always just me. It's like, so I've laxed my expectations, but at the same time, it's try to come up with creative ways to get people engaged in what they're doing and how they're doing things. So, you know, give me today, you got to pick three things that you learned today that you didn't know yesterday. And it could be from how you rake to, tying two ropes together. Like every once in a while, it's like, give me three things.
Hmm.
So that's his sort of his responsibility is to try to pick these three things.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like recently, it was like one of the younger guys just didn't seem to quite get it, like as far as where he should be or what he could be doing, and putting himself in positions where he could have got hurt. So now it's like, all right, I need you to get yourself a little notepad and a pen, and it stays with your lunch. So every time you do something you shouldn't be doing, or if you put yourself in harm's way, it's going to cost you $1. You write it in your notepad, and then you write why you got $1 deducted. And then after a while, if you haven't been able to reduce that, because if you do something good, then you get $1 back.
Okay.
Yeah, but if that adds up at a point, then it's basically you got to take that hit, and you're buying coffee for the crew or something. But it's just another way to, in my mind, to try to make the learning process a little more interesting and involved, because if it's going to take money out of your pocket, you're probably going to pay attention a little bit more. So it's like, like I said, in your my own way is try to make it creative instead of just like, why did you like, didn't you realize that you're in the wrong spot? Like, how dare you? Right?
Pain and discomfort are good motivators. They're catalysts for change.
Yeah. So,
Especially the old acronym of C. If a tool or technique C's, it's worth putting in the toolbox versus the toy box. And does it make it safer? Does it make it easier? And does it make it more efficient?
yeah.
And it's still a pretty good acronym to apply to anything you do. And
Yeah.
a lot of times people will say ease and efficiency are the same thing, but we talked about here how hard work can be. That's where the ease
Yeah.
comes in. But efficiency, just because something is easy, but if it takes 3 days or 3 hours, and it has to have a certain amount of efficiency to it as well.
Yeah. No, exactly. The amount of equipment that's available nowadays, if you have it, it just the physical toll on individuals' bodies are still getting. It's less than what it used to be, but it's still a physical game. And like as a older individual that works with a lot of younger individuals, I see them picking up loads, wood brush and doing things with their body. I just like, like, I don't know if you realize it's a cumulative here, guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like these
Yeah,
60-year-old parts, it takes a while to get them fixed again.
yeah,
You got to be wary of that, but it's, not everybody thinks about that. Like if I was going to tell anybody that's new to this or just about anything else, when I was younger, I thought I'd be a better climber if I was stronger. So it was all about, going to the gym, getting stronger. But I never really focused a lot on mobility and flexibility. And now I'm realizing that it's all about mobility, maintaining that body mobility. You don't need to be as strong as you think. But if you're mobile enough, you're able to get over some of these minor aches and pains a lot quicker. So to me, that's the most important thing. Being in a physically demanding profession is you got to maintain that body mobility. Because if you plan on doing this, like you said, I'm in the 30-year range, which I'm at 33 or 34 now. It definitely is a big thing for me. Some days are good, some days are bad. But if I would have known this 20 years ago, I'd probably be a lot fitter because of my mobility compared to what I have right now.
Yeah. Well, and that's partly exercise and even diet
Yeah,
and lifestyle, isn't it?
yeah, no, definitely. The boys make fun of me because like I'm constantly taking vitamin supplements and this and that, and it's like, I don't know where I'd be if it wasn't for some of this stuff, but I I don't think I'm pissing my money away.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to speak.
not at
Um,
all.
um, Now I want to ask you a question, and we don't, we can, we do reserve the right to edit things out, and you can always say no. But you've been climbing and working in trees a long time, and as you know, and been a teacher of arboriculture for us, and in other
Hmm.
capacities most of your career. Um, and there's humbling experiences that can occur to us all, and you don't want the worst to have happened, and it wasn't maybe the worst outcome, but you experienced something that some of us hope to never experience, and you walked away from it. Mostly I think you did walk away from it, but like that whole experience,
Yeah,
and maybe you want to, you told me all about it in detail,
yeah,
and there's,
yeah,
I'm sure there's a lesson there, and what the teacher in you is willing to share with us about that experience.
yeah. Well, I mean, shortly after that happened, it was like there's only a couple people that need to know about this. But then as time went on, I realized that, you know what, like it's not that if it could happen to me, it could happen to anybody else, but it was just, I talked to a few other people, and, like I just felt more comfortable saying, like, this is what I did. After it all happened, I realized, like, complacency and haste, put me in a position that could end up being a lot worse than what it was. But so what happened to me last spring was a small blue spruce removal, not very tall. Once I got up into the tree and then started just taking it apart, um, I realized I need to use the washroom. And I was like, well, I should be able to get this done. But anyway, partway through the removal, I realized that no, I think I'm just going to hit the ground and I'll jump in the back of the truck and use the porta potty, as we call it. But so I had my friction saver there, pulley saver, and so in my haste, after I'd taken the top out of this tree, I just ran my splice through the clevis, the removal, but I didn't put it through the pulley, and then I clipped in. So then I was close enough to the ground that I knew that all I needed to do was push off once, probably come back into the trunk, second time hit the ground, unclip, and I'm out of there. Well, as I pushed off, it like I was descending on my zigzag as normal, but then all of a sudden, it sometimes it felt like slow motion, but I realized that I wasn't coming back into the tree and I was still falling. And I knew before I hit the ground that I'm going to hit the ground. Not that I changed my body positioning, but because I pushed off, I basically, when I actually hit the ground, because it was around 20 feet or so, I hit the ground almost on my side. And then, like, I probably shouldn't say what came out of my mouth, but because I realized I'd made a mistake, and the fellow that was with me once before this, I tripped in a gopher hole, and he came over to give me a hand. He's like, "You all right?" And like, I don't like people asking me if I'm all right. So anyway, I cursed and squared at him, and I told him, "Get away. Like, if I need your help, I'll let you know." Basically, what? Yeah. So anyway, when I hit the ground there, I was gonna jump right up again, and I was like, "No, I gotta." I just fell out of a tree. Like, I need to just make sure I can move everything. So I did my toes, my fingers. I looked at my extremities, because I had my chainsaw on as well, but nothing seemed to be cut. Nothing hurt excessively, other than my pride. And then, so then I went to, all fours. That was okay. My head felt good. So then when I went to stand up, then I was like, uh-oh. Yeah, I could feel it in my groin on my right side. Yeah, this isn't good. And then I was really mad. So then I had to ask Al, I need your hand. I need help. I need you to come over here, because he was on one side of the sedge and I was on the homeowner side. And he was like, "For what?" I said, "Just get over here. I need you to help me get to the truck." Because I don't think he realized what had happened. So anyway, I basically told him, I was like, "Get me to the other side of the hedge, because I don't want to see the homeowners to see me on the ground like this." So we got over to the step of the truck. I got my harness off, and then I tried standing up again. Then I realized, yeah, something going on there. So then I made the call, and it's like, "Listen, this is what happened. Can someone come pick me up? I should go to the hospital." So away we went, and I ended up with a torn abductor muscle, which put me on crutches for a few weeks, but then progressively got better and better and better, and now, you know, I can't say like I feel it at all, but most days not a problem at all. Like I said, I was very fortunate, but it's just the way it played out. It's, you get in a rush, your complacency, there's definitely factors there. I blame it on the, wanting to hit the ground to use the washroom, but, it was just trying to move through things too quickly and not double checking. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's the one thing about this darn business, well, anybody working at heights, or there's certain
Yeah.
types of jobs that, a little simple little mistake,
Hmm.
can have, just bigger consequences than a lot of activities, right? A lot of jobs do. And, you obviously got probably a little lucky, just like sometimes you get in the competitions.
Yeah. Yeah. And, like, there's one thing that I learned from Tony actually was, like using your lanyard a lot of times, just put it on. You may not need it, but just because it makes you feel good. And, like in some positions, I may not be as, you know, putting it on as consistently as some other individuals, but I just remember one time I was standing on the top of an elm in Edmonton one time, and like we were just pruning it. But anyway, where I was standing was pretty flat. There was leaves there, and I was just going to pull my climbing line out and put it in a different part of the tree. And at first I started to pull, and then before I pulled it out, I was like, "No, I'm going to put my lanyard on." Just always think back to Tony. So that's what I did. And then as soon as I start pulling, well, there was more than just a layer of leaves. There was two or three, and everything underneath the top layer was wet. So as soon as I pulled on that, my feet slipped out, and I end up like head down, like head first, hanging off my lanyard, on the side of this tree. And I started laughing, and the guy on the ground's like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine, man. I'm just laughing because I'm lucky. Like, if it wasn't for what Tony said and I didn't take it for what it meant, like, I I might not be here because I was coming head first to the ground from, once again, around that 20-foot range, maybe a little bit higher than that. So it's just, yeah, like take the time.
Well,
Yeah,
I think that plays. I don't know what the statistic is, or if there is statistics on the heights. I mean, we know that above 40 feet, the chance of survival drops dramatically.
yeah,
But I wonder how often under that height, where you don't, it's only 20 feet. Like even in your referencing the story, but like that's
yeah, yeah,
that's far enough, man. And that's where some
yeah.
complacency. Like, does our complacency increase as our height decreases?
There again, like, yeah, statistically, I dare say it probably does. But there
Yeah,
again, I think a lot of it ends up being the individuals. I always talk about good habits and bad habits, and if you have that habit of always doing something, regardless of where you are, you're doing it consistently without unconsciously doing it.
yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
if it's a bad habit, it's the same goes. It's true as well.
True.
It's an unconscious thing, like the whole thumb wrap on the front handle, like. Sometimes it just blows my mind when how quickly someone can put that thumb back up there after you've just reminded them to wrap it.
Yeah,
And unconsciously, as soon as that saw position changes one little bit, the thumb's right up there, and it's like, you go back, tap them on the shoulder. I just less than 5 seconds ago, I mentioned it to you, and look, it's right back up, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't even believe I did that. It's like, well, you did, yeah. So it's hard to break, yeah, good or bad. So I always say,
yeah.
go to
No,
the good side instead of the dark side.
yeah, yeah. It is. It's
Yeah,
well, I mean, even the term repetitive complacency, right? Like you
yeah,
do there's repetitive complacency, and then there's repetitive excellency,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Like what the opposite of repetitive complacency? What would that be?
Yeah,
But yeah, it makes perfect sense. You form a habit. It can be a good habit or a bad habit. It's like, thoughts turn into actions. Choose the good ones, right?
yeah, yeah.
Habits turn into
Mhm.
tendencies. Choose the good habits. Or yeah,
Yeah,
I always tell people, like, when like lanyard use is a classic example of it, but it's like sometimes the question to ask isn't why would I put my lanyard on? The question to ask is why wouldn't you? Right. So if you can answer the why not, then you probably have a pretty decent argument, right? But if the only
yeah,
answer you have to why not is, well, I don't feel like it, or it's so far away, then you
yeah,
probably don't have much of an argument. So, and those little repetitive actions like that, I tell people all the time, when it comes to your thumb wrapped or your lanyard use, you
yeah.
stay in this business long enough that will save you from injury or worse, and you'll probably never know.
yeah.
Exactly. And that's what I say as well. Yeah, yeah,
Well, and I think that what you were talking about earlier, Danny, like in your career, being willing to learn and keeping that open mind and asking why, that's also habit forming. That's your
yeah,
attitude, your willingness to learn is,
yeah,
because then it's you don't have to answer the question. It isn't so hard to answer the question why.
yeah, yeah,
If it's a suggestion and you're willing to take suggestion, that again, it ties into your humility, into your willingness.
mhm,
Like if someone that's been around a little longer, or maybe he's experienced things you haven't, which is almost certainly the case in all cases, you know,
yeah,
why do you need to ask why? It's if it's a suggestion that's in your best interest. If you're
yeah,
arguing, you can form a habit of arguing with things and disagreeing. Kind of
yeah,
like your, why did you ask me if I need help? I'll let you know if I need help.
yeah. Well, it's unfortunate because the guy that asked, he's such a nice guy, and my answer to him was like, I always like if something hurts me or bothers me, like I use a few expletives there just to get out of my system real quick, and then it's gone. And if if some of my words are directed towards an individual, it's always like I put my head back and I go, "Oh, why did you do that, you idiot?" So I end up apologizing, but it's just in the spur of the moment. It's kind of my like, get it out.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and that I think, and that is
And then
another
people realize
golden.
that. Yeah.
Well, it's another
Yeah.
golden nugget though. If you everyone does things in a moment of high emotion, but are you
Yeah.
willing to go back and apologize and say, you know what, I was upset, I shouldn't have done that, and that because not
Yeah.
everybody does that. A lot of people will, I resemble that comment I'm making, like, and I've learned better how to do that. You don't if you don't observe the fact that you've offended or hurt someone emotionally or whatever, and you're not willing to, after you calm down, say, hey, you know what, I was wrong, I should have done that. Like that's another one of those attitudes. Like that's like your thumb going up, right? And not
Yeah.
everyone practices that. And I think that's another example to show people, and thing that makes a difference in especially in people that have been maybe in this business a long time, or anything that the 38-year people that you talked about, Tony. I think a lot of people like that. That's I don't know if there's ever been a study on it, but they have that ability to not only vent and acknowledge their own emotion, like, and honor that. Like, you're mad, you're upset, you let it out, but you also apologize for someone you may have shocked or hurt in the process, and
Yeah.
hopefully not physically. I mean that,
So some of the
very
younger
within reason.
guys, yeah, some of
What's
the
that?
younger guys that work, some of the younger guys that I work with, like, they kind of grew up with the old LeBlanc, they call it, like always angry, and and I always say, well, at least I was consistent, but I'm not as much, at this point, and like I see that the not the anger, but the frustration in other people a lot more, and I just like I can envision what I sounded and looked like. Your body, your mannerisms, like you don't even have to say a word. People can see that you're not happy or you're upset. So I'm just like, man, I probably was a hard guy to work with because I went a long time without having any incidents or accidents, and like I always say, if you've gone 20 plus years without having one of those, you're 100% in some ways, right? So it's like, why would you want to do like your way has been right every other time, so this is how it's being done. And not that it should be, but for me, it kind of took an incident that caused damage for me to realize that like you got to step back and say, okay, is this, should I be doing this or should I be looking at it? Because if the little hairs on the back of your head are letting you know they're there, then maybe you should, it's like, okay, maybe I should change this a little bit. Whereas in the past, like, well, this similar situation went well. No, this will be all right. And so I have a lot more like step back, and because I've had nothing too major, but I've had a few things that didn't go the way they're supposed to, and property damage more than anything. And it just ruins anybody's day, and it might take you a while to get over it, especially if you're younger. Like it's not as easy to get back up on that horse and start riding again after anything minor or major. So
Well, and they're all like, like I said earlier, anything that causes pain or discomfort, tends to change us. And um but you're speaking about noticing others more, and noticing yourself being different energetically. What do you contribute that to? Like, what do you think's caused that, besides age and and so on? But is there anything that happened, or that you'd be able to share with us, that helped you realize this, or that people could learn from?
um, I just probably the biggest thing is this: the length of time I've been at this. Um, you need to change. Some things I've been resistant to change, like SRS. Like I keep saying, like I can see the advantage to that system, but whenever I've tried it or done it, I found it was certain aspects of it was harder on my body than the techniques and the tools that I'm using right now, and so a little resistant to change on that. But at the same time, it's like with age, having parents that suffer from Alzheimer's, um, some days I see that in myself as well, and I just like need to step back and slow down on my thought process, and part of that is not being as aggressive, like not enjoying the moment, but realizing that the history is a lot longer than the future for me when it comes to the work. So knowing where you are and where you're probably gonna be is like just you don't have to be this guy your entire career. It's nice to be a little more pleasant once in a while, even though I am still quiet and
Well,
consistent.
it's interesting because I think it seems to me because I feel similarly. It comes with age to a certain extent, and I don't know how you can't impart age and experience to younger people, right? Other than telling and
Yeah,
sharing your experience, right? But I
yeah,
know I wonder, our demographic of listeners, if we have the younger climbers listening, what they think of all these old guys telling stories, and the things we talk about, because it's a common theme that we get in, and we're trying to get a younger audience or younger guests on the show
yeah.
to broaden our
No,
scope, but nevertheless, um, you know, is it just an osmotic thing, or I'm curious about that. I'm just verbally talking, or my brain is just coming out here what's in my mind. But
yeah,
you know what I mean, Tony?
yeah,
Does Danny's
yeah,
make sense?
yeah, yeah.
Here we
Well,
are, all of us in a pretty similar demographic, right? And a
yes.
lot of our guests, and we in similar thought patterns. I wonder what our younger guests would think of our younger listeners, and I want to honor them too. Like I don't want to alienate anyone, but
Hmm.
if they're willing
Yeah.
to listen, we're certainly here telling the stories and talking.
Well, after work, some people have more stories than others because of the length of time they've been doing it, and that's when they tend to like to listen in, and you know, sometimes there's a lesson in the story, and other times it's just a story. But you know, if you're not at the cusp of the new techniques, materials, equipment, like I was 20 some years ago, um, it's hard to be consistently talking about all these things that are the latest and greatest because, in some ways, what I've learned in my techniques haven't, they still work, they're still functional. Sometimes I see the cost savings and the time savings in doing things one way versus another. So, the efficiency's still there. I definitely work a lot smarter than harder in the last 10 to 15 years, which allows me, but at the same time, I know that the things I retain, I gotta throw a lot of small little bits and pieces of information out because it's a little harder to keep that memory bank um, fully charged and ready to go every day. Yeah, some days may be a little bit harder than others, but trying to make sure that what I do have to do and navigate, I do it as well, as I can, and you know, realize that there's a day that's coming. Like I said, the future is a lot shorter than the history, so it's a lot easier to think back than to think forward.
and keeping in mind that, right now is right now, and it is here.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
coming, and it's not gone yet, and that
Yeah.
that ultimately is the real, I think, gift or prize, is to be able to focus on, you know, what's happening right now, and taking it all in for what it is, because just like that,
Yeah.
they're gone, and thinking about what it's going to be hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's I forget who was on once before, and they were saying, like, some of the companies have a lot of young people, uh, and they're all really good at what they do, but without having that older, experienced individuals to maybe point things out, that like it's like a learning opportunity lost because they don't have the insight of someone that kind of went through that growth phase that they're not going through here at all, because of that anybody that's been in less than 5 years, you got experience, but how much you got? Less than 5 years experience, even though you might be doing things that a 30-year-old experienced climber or individual are doing, but you haven't had maybe the opportunity to have those near misses like the older fella that might be able to point out, well, I remember when I had a situation like this, and the near misses are, when you teach yourself that, well, I'm not going to do that again. And sometimes there's a few or a lot more of those that come into play. Yeah.
You make a good point about the experiences, and and there has been more than a couple of our guests have talked about, what, having that blend of experience on a crew makes such a difference. But it made me think about this generation that we talk about. We clump in a term, but they've experienced such change in technology with the all of
Yeah.
us are keenly aware of what the cell phone has become, and from what it when it started to what it is now, it's just like it pales tree climbing, like the internet and the
Hmm.
cell phone.
Yeah.
Those have impacted what we do hugely because of this exchange of information. But there was nobody to these people living through this massive change. They don't really have reference point to compare it to. And our age, when we were that age, it doesn't compare at all. We had no access to the resources of knowledge that this generation
No.
has. And so it's hard for us to even mentor that. It makes me wonder the next 20 years, when there's going to be a generation that actually experienced this massive shift in, or grew up in the technology as it is. For us, it's every time it's like, oh yeah, now what? Now what does my phone do? Does it take my blood pressure too, or
Yeah.
does like,
Yeah.
which it probably
Yeah.
does. I don't
Yeah.
even talking about it, I sound ignorant, but you know what I mean. Like, there isn't this generation that's lived through this cell phone era. There isn't really any other generation that can relate to that in the same
No,
way.
you're right. Yeah.
So who's there
Yeah.
to? They're going to have to. They're in a whole new phase of development, as a
Yeah.
society, as humankind. And I think it's global. Like, I don't think you can go to any country, no matter, like, there's when I was in Thailand, there's families with dirt floors that had flat screen TVs and cell phones. They had
Yeah.
computers and cell phones, but they didn't have an air conditioner, because but cell phone and a stove and a fridge, those are must
Mhm.
haves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a different thing, eh?
My advice to younger climbers listening to a bunch of old climbers tell stories is just do what I did when I was younger. Is like, listen to the stories, be appreciative, take out the little parts that can help, leave the rest behind, and then when
Hmm.
you're in this position, it'll all come full circle, and you'll see what we were talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and I agree with that. Yeah. When your opportunity. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah.
And you most of it, 90% of it, you'll leave behind because, like, because you don't have a frame of reference. right?
That's right.
But
Yep.
if you stay in the business long enough and you have 30 plus years in, you'll have the frame of reference. You're like, yeah, now I see it.
Yeah.
Right? So just listen, right? The
Yeah.
stories you can't ignore, and this is how you can always tell bad tree stories, when everything's bigger or taller. So if I tell Danny a story about, yeah, we were doing this 50-foot spruce, and Danny's next story is like, yeah, well, I was doing a 75-foot spruce, and then Dwayne's like, well, I was doing 120-foot. When that starts happening, that's like fishing stories. Just
Yeah.
tune that right out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if the tree the young tree grows, it gets stomped on by some deer and the terminal buds get eaten off and it forms codominance and it gets bigger and then as it progresses in its life, decades go, a branch rips out in a storm, and it's like, why did that happen? And then, then a cavity forms, and then an owl comes and visits and lives in there, and it's like maybe that was my purpose. 80 years later, I'm a home for an owl, and it forms a great friendship, and like these things that happen in our life, that we don't know why and what the purpose of it is. Sometimes it comes into a bit more focus as we get older, and it's one of the ways I like to look at trees and one the functions they serve within nature and even in a community, like in someone's yard. You hung a hummingbird feeder off it, and 30 years later you got a swing off this hanging off of
Yeah.
it, and it's providing a function, and we're
Yeah.
like that too, right?
Yeah. Well, and like through my career, I had the opportunity to work for a couple municipalities, and I always say, like, well, when I work for these places, it's like I'm there to provide a service, and I'm not there to make money. So, like, efficiency wasn't always top of mind, but at the same time, what I really enjoyed when it come to the tree is tree aspect of things is like I could do things to some of the smaller trees the way I prune them, and then I can consistently go back and check. So I had access to what I call this living laboratory, that I could go and see the way I made my cut on this thing, or how I pruned that or that, how it affected things, a few months, a couple years, a few years down the road. And then I was able to, like, oh, I noticed this, I noticed that. Put that into my memory banks, my toolbox, and it's like, okay, whenever I have that species, I'll remember this. But I was able to take that opportunity to consistently teach myself little things that I always wondered. So, like, it doesn't matter how old you are, if you have opportunities to do that for yourself, you don't have to share it with everybody, but it's a great way to just train yourself or teach yourself little things that you can pass on to other people, above and beyond the big and dynamic new greatest technique. Taking advantage of the opportunities you have on where you're at.
Which is again part of being able to be in the present moment and observing what's right in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like, we're in a part of our country where, when it comes to extreme weather, we have ice storms in the winter. We have nor'easters come up. We have, back when I was a kid, a hurricane. Well, that hits, Florida and the Carolinas. It doesn't affect us here, but as time goes on, and the first hurricane that I realized had a dramatic effect on our area was Hurricane Juan, and learning how to deal with these trees that are now in these unbelievable positions, and or uh, you know uh, like structurally just gone. Like, how do you deal with that stuff? And it happens, unfortunately, a little more regularly, but it's just amazing what you learn over the years. And we've had a couple younger guys that were waiting for that big storm to come through, and then we got Fiona here 3 years ago now, and they got their first taste of what happens when, extreme winds and heavy rain hits an area, that like what it can do. And it's interesting how they dealt with it compared to someone that's been through a few of these. And it's like, don't run down to get that cut out. Just step back and walk down. Like, just slow down there, buddy. Take your time. Yeah. That's one thing that I observed when some of these guys got their first taste of a big storm. And I was like, you know what? You want to keep your pace down, because adrenaline only lasts for so long. And I think we're in for the long haul. So just pace yourselves out wisely.
Old age and treachery. Old age and treachery will always overcome youth and adrenaline.
That's right. Yeah. For sure.
Well,
yes.
we're at that stage. It's about at that part where we reach a sort of a natural segue. I think it's either biological or psychological, but around this time frame with most of our guests, we kind of reach a natural end. Segue, I was going to say. But want to thank you for taking time out of your day to join us, Danny.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I appreciate the offer. I always say, being from the small town that I grew up in and the area that I work in, the opportunity to meet people like yourself and Tony and other individuals, I feel very fortunate. And, to get invited on to your podcast after seeing some of the other individuals that have gone ahead of me, it's like I feel honored and grateful. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I have this weird idea, and I learned it from you, and I use it, but you kind of have to train people a little bit on it. And it's because I have a hard time. Like sometimes, like my wife will say, you'll start to say goodbye, and it'll be like 20 minutes later before you actually say goodbye. And you and I are certainly infamous for that. And we both resemble that comment. But you taught me something that I don't know if it was something your girls taught you because they wanted you to say goodbye sooner, or where did that come from?
Was them. Yeah.
Well, tell us about your tradition.
Well, it used to be, before cell phones, like say when I was in New Jersey, using a landline, 3 conversations with 3 girls, basically the same thing over and over again, to see what difference was in their day when I talked to them. But after a while, like, I enjoyed the conversations, but for them, not so much. So it was like, Dad, you need to say goodbye. So I was like, all right, yeah, I will. And it's like, all right, on 3, yeah, 1, 2, 3, bye. And then that was it. So we always had to count it down. And I guess you thought that was, that's a good way to end it.
Well, what I thought was interesting is that, like, because someone can call it, right? Whoever says 1 first, it's like, okay, this is actually the end, right? So
yeah, this is it, eh? And then every once in a while, you go, wait. Yeah.
So I thought it would be fun to not only share that with people, because it works, and once 2 people have talked about it once, you can use it, and it's so easy to remember. So I'd like to. I thought it'd be fun to do here. So 1,
2, 3. Thank you.